Just Mickey, I'm going to do a quick count. We have a quorum. We have others who are in the halls. They're going to be trickling in. I will. Do we have member Booth on? We'll do a roll call vote anyway. Let me just get things. You can turn your mic on or speak loudly. I'm not sure how the system is on Fridays. It's a little bit different, but let's go ahead and call this meeting to order with a roll call vote. Member Bogus?
Yes.
Member Bollinger? Here. Member Booth?
Yes.
Member Brinton?
Yes.
Member Davis? She's not planning to join us, is that right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. We'll just, let me know, Sybil, if she does jump on. Member Earl? Yes. Member Green? Member Hall? He is around here somewhere. Member Hart, Vice Chair Hart?
Yes, here.
I'm here. Member Kelly?
Here.
Member Carey?
Here.
Member Lear?
Here.
Member Reel?
Here.
And Vice Chair Wood will join us momentarily as well. Okay. With that, let's go to our first agenda item, the Utah School for Deaf and Blind. And I'm going to look at, I'm just going to go, okay, so agenda item 5.1 on what the papers in front of me is 5.1, is that what you guys are seeing as well? 5.1, information monthly budget update as of February 28, 2025. We'll turn time over to the Finance Director, Carl Empey.
Chairs and board members, before I begin my remarks in the financial report, I'd just like to take 2 minutes and just read a little statement just to report where we are in attestation of the financial solvency of USDB. Every month when I sit before you and report that USDB is financially solvent and that USDB has sufficient cash on hand to pay our bills, it has been an accurate and remains accurate even as today as I report for the 8 months that ended February 28th. It's a statement that I do not take lightly in making because my reputation is on the line. Yesterday, Deputy Jones mentioned that he cannot state for a fact that USDB is financially solvent. I don't blame him because he hasn't been involved in the day-to-day details, and he will be soon, and will be able to prove that through the audit. But I can report to you that USDB is financially solvent. USDB, like your office, has to use the State of Utah FiNet accounting system software. It's a system that we record all of our inflows and all of our expenses that we pay. Monthly, we get 2 financial reports. One is an AM31, which is a balance sheet. One is an AM65, which is a income statement. We prepare the financial reports that we'll go over with from those reports and the data that's housed in the state's data warehouse. They're all audible and defensible, and we stand behind those numbers. It's true that USDB had accumulated millions over the years in our carry forward funds due mainly to capital improvements that we were not able to get bids for from contractors because they were so busy building the large state capital projects and the commercial projects. However, we were able to get bids the last year and a half and completed the majority of them. In a matter of a number of years, we've spent down $10 million just in our capital improvements from our carry forward projects. USDB also had a number of positions on our personnel array that remained unfilled. During this period of time when we had large surpluses, we were told to eliminate those positions, which we did, which has tightened our vacancy savings down considerably. As you know, we've experienced significant growth in our enrollment and service requirements over the past couple years without receiving any benefit and any additional funding from the legislature, including for this next fiscal year. We welcome the financial audit that you approved yesterday. We look forward to it, actually. I know that doesn't sound right, but we look forward to it because I think it's going to show that our numbers have been accurate. My staff do an amazing job. While they're not perfect, we're really good, and I stand to defend them. We welcome the audit that you approved yesterday, and we reached out to Debbie Davis yesterday, and I'm going to meet with her right after this board meeting, and we're going to have a kickoff meeting, and my staff, I've directed them to dedicate their time and resources to accomplish this audit in the time frame that you would like it to be done in. Thank you for your time, and let's talk about the financial report now for the 8 months that ended February 28th. Our inflows, as we report on a monthly basis for the first 8 months, is $40.9 million. Our outflows, or our expenditures, was I'm just going to round it up to 41.2 million, leaving us in a deficit, having more expenses year to date than inflows of $277,000. Now, we've got over $1 million in the bank right now. So even though we have a deficit, we have cash on hand to pay our bills. As I usually start off, and I mentioned in my remarks, we remain financially solvent and fiscally solvent. The number of students on campus have increased to 402, which is amazing. The total students receiving services is 2,427, and the total student services provided was 5,227. Now, we report the cash balances at the bottom of this financial report on the land grant enrichment fund, the donated fund, and also our foundation fund. The cash at the end of February, excuse me, at the end of February 28th was $833,000. The balance in the donated funds was $288,000, and our foundation balance was $1,184,000. And before I get into the enrichment fund projects, Mr. Chair, are there any questions from the board?
Yes, thank you. We'll turn over to Member Bollinger.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. If I may direct a question, just curious if you can help explain the difference between total students receiving services. I would just imagine those are all the kids that we're providing services for. And then total student services provided. What constitutes that, adding to that number? Because it does look like there's been a big jump from like over 2,000. Can you just clarify what that actually means? Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that. So the total number of students receiving services is actually the bodies, the persons. However, one of those students could receive, let's say they have deaf blindness. They could be receiving a service from a teacher of the visually impaired, an orientation and mobility specialist, a teacher of the deaf hard of hearing, a teacher of the deafblind, an intervener, an audiologist, and a low vision specialist. So they may be receiving 7. Now that's that's like the extreme. But most of the kids that we are serving in the outreach are receiving more than one service because they have additional. I mean, even most of the students that are receiving services from a teacher of the visually impaired are also receiving services from an orientation mobility specialist. So that's 2 services. So that's what those services are. So that's why that's such a higher number. It's not just the students. We have those two counts: the students and then the services, because the services are actually what matter when it's coming to personnel costs.
But you're right, Board Member Bollinger, the student services required has jumped dramatically. And that is a lot of pressure on Susan Patton's staff and Dr. Michelle Tanner's staff. And that's where we're in a pinch, to be quite frank, with being able to take care of the needs of our kids. Okay, the next report.
Thank you.
Is there any
Member
other
Bollinger, is
questions?
that perfect? Yep, please.
Okay,
Oh,
Mr. Chair.
One more,
Yes.
sorry. A late light from Member Earl.
Yeah, and I guess I just wanted clarification on that as well, that those additional services are services that are provided and written into IEPs. Is that accurate?
Yes.
These aren't services, you're just providing their IEP services that have been facilitated through a meeting with the parent and the school and your, okay.
And our
that's all.
100%
Yep,
of those
that's it.
services are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The budget for the enrichment funds, this is the fun part of our job. This is money coming from the Land Grant Trust Fund. This is not state taxpayer dollars. The amount of the projects that you approved back in May of last year totaled at $1.4 million. We have spent, and on this report that's in your packet, if you want all the information, you can just click on the blue hyperlink and it'll take you to all the programs that are embedded in each one of those lines. We have spent, including the bottom line of the community land grant to the community council money, of $800,498, giving us a balance to be spent through the rest of the year of just over $600,000. And I know if you've looked at the emails coming from Susan's office and Michelle's office with all the list of the activities, they're going to do a good job of spending that money down. And that is my financial report, Mr. Chair. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer, or we can move on.
I think we're ready to move on. Oh, we got a hand up? Member Booth, go ahead.
Thank you. I haven't figured out how to raise my hand on this computer yet. I apologize. I just had a question that came out of the discussion regarding services being provided. We've had a number of emails from concerned parents and other constituents regarding the needs of students that have perhaps higher needs than a regular student just going to high school or elementary school. And today we got one email that indicated that Utah is so far behind in meeting the needs of these students with special needs. And as you look at your IEPs, as you look at the number of the services that are provided, maybe even as many as 7 to 1 student, how do you feel we are meeting the needs of the deaf and blind students in the state of Utah? Would you say that we are basically meeting their needs, or are we in a severe deficit, as was indicated by this citizen who wrote earlier this morning about some other students with special needs?
Board Member Booth, I'm happy to answer that. It's,
Thank you.
you know, it just depends, which is a very good answer for special education because it's so very individualized, right? However, I know I can only speak for the School for the Blind and for the services that we are providing. I would say that we're providing we're providing services that meet the needs of our completely blind students. They're the ones that need Braille instructions perhaps on a daily basis or perhaps on a 3 times a week basis. Those are where we put our resources. Where I feel like we are not serving the students that we need with as many services, or not necessarily as many services, but the intensity of the services. For instance, it might be on their IEP for a student with additional disabilities that we're on a consult. So that consult could happen once a month, it could happen twice a month, it could happen once a quarter, and that's designated in the IEP. We have talked as a staff in the blind school that in our outreach, those students do need more than what we're able to give them. But we put our efforts with the school, with our blind students who are reading Braille, so they're not falling behind in their academic pursuits. And we just do the best we can, but I can't say that we are meeting those needs, But I also wouldn't say that we're completely dropping the ball in that too, that they're not getting any needs met, or needs met, not needs net. That's talent right there. And so I don't know that that really answers the question, but I do know with our kids with additional disabilities, a lot of times, and it's not just USDB, but it's LEAs wide. Those kids, and this shouldn't happen, but sometimes they're the ones that get forgotten. They're the ones that are put in the back of a classroom because they don't have behavior issues. They're not the ones that are demanding the attention. So when a student with cortical visual impairment, which is a brain function, not a vision function, and they have additional disabilities, we're not able to give the resources that we would like to give to that student because the need is not demonstrated. And the schools also are not necessarily asking for that as well. But the conversations are, we need more, we need to be helping those students more. Did that answer your question? I don't know if that helped with the email that you received.
I think it helps very much, but it points to our need in our standing committee that will continue to dive deep and begin to perhaps find a way to articulate what those needs are and how we might go about meeting those needs at a higher level, so that you're not being frustrated in your conversations, realizing that students really are not accessing everything that they need in order to progress in the way that they would love to progress. So I'm eager for those conversations to take place in our ongoing meetings. Thank you very much for that information.
Sure, I do want to be clear. We value those students. Those students are just as important, and as do all of the LEAs. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that when we're looking at resources, it can be a triage type of a situation where we're looking at what are the needs that are the intensive Braille instruction, deafblind services. Anyway, but I don't want it to come across that those students are not important to anybody in the state of Utah as far as in public education. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent Patton, is it budget, bandwidth, both? And then I have a follow-up question after we do 3Bs.
so I would say both. Number one, we don't have the personnel to cover those students, right? Or to cover like we would want to cover. And then, so that's the bandwidth as far as the, one thing that's important to realize too is, and this has been an ongoing discussion, a caseload could have they could have 14 students, where typically it's about 20 to 25 students for a teacher of the visually impaired. If you have 14 students, but 7 of those students require daily Braille instruction, or they require Braille instruction, they're in high school and they require an hour and a half of Braille instruction 3 days a week. That amount of time, you can't have 21 students on that caseload. So that's the bandwidth issue. And then it's the personnel issue, as far as we don't have the personnel to be covering that amount of students either. We do. This is a conversation that does happen a lot in our blind administrative, so the directors that I supervise, that they have a common concern when we switch from the parent-infant program to our LEAs, or to the Part B. So from Part C to Part B, a lot of times those kids with additional disabilities are PIP administration or our PIP providers and whatnot, because they're in the homes 2-3 times a week. They're in the homes at least once a week. Does that make, like, they're providing for kids with additional disabilities, and then they go into the Part B system, and the IEP team, not necessarily at USDB, but the IEP team might deem we only need to see a teacher of the visually impaired once every month or once every quarter. And so we have a discussion because we've got our PIP folks that are saying, okay, we were in the home once a week here. We were in the home providing services once a week, and now in Part B, in the school age, that's not going to be happening. We're looking at education, not the natural environment, but that's a continued conversation as far as frustration. So it's a little bit, it's both bandwidth and budget.
May I ask one final question? I could have misheard, but I think I heard you correctly when you said sometimes our LEAs are not asking for the help that perhaps they should. Did I hear that correctly? And then,
Well, I think that it's, again, it's an IEP team's decision, so I think that they're aware too of bandwidth, and a lot of the 3% district, the larger districts, they're providing their own, so they're dealing with that same kind of thing, bandwidth, personnel and whatnot. So, yes, they are expressing that, like, we would like to have more, more than just classroom accommodations, I should say, that we're working directly with those students.
okay, I have no further questions.
Yeah, my goodness. Yeah.
May,
Thank
may
you.
I interject?
Who's interjecting?
It's Michelle Peck.
Oh,
Oh,
good, Michelle's here,
Perfect.
yay.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry if I'm not on screen. I'm sorry if I'm not on screen. It's 4 a.m. here in Japan with my students. So I just thought I'd want to address with Superintendent Patton the same concerns that you had. I would like to say that considering the amount of money that we have, we do a fantastic job of meeting the needs of our students. I think we do a good job of getting out what they need. I think there are cases, as Superintendent Patton explained, that sometimes when you've got a student that you're not sure if they're consult or if they're direct serve, you may lean towards consult if you already can't physically get to places. We've also done some things to help adjust for that. We've done remote. So for example, if you physically can't drive because the student is out a long distance, we will do a remote session in between some of those meetings so that we can meet those needs and see that student and spend time with that student. So I think, in my opinion, that because of the dedication, the commitment of all staff at USDB, we've done a remarkable job of meeting those needs. There are times when we're concerned about a student and would like to provide more, but those are the things that happen. The other thing that happens in classrooms, what happens in classrooms is the classrooms just get larger. So we can meet those students' need, but instead of there being a classroom of 5, we're now at a classroom of 10. And so those are times that we have different adjustments there. So those are the things that we do when the budget is tight and the budget is difficult.
Thank you, Michelle. Out of my own curiosity, what time is it in Japan?
4 a.m.
4 a.m. We wouldn't-
4:20, I guess you could say that.
Disciplinary discussion when she gets back to
Yeah, you're supposed to be
US.
relaxing or at least sleeping. So anyway, thank you for that. Appreciate that. And I believe, Carl, that wraps up your agenda item 5.1.
Chair, that concludes the financial report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go over to Superintendent Joel Coleman for a superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we pull up on the browser, can we pull up usdb.org? The first part of my superintendent report, I'm sorry I didn't get, whoever's driving, I didn't give you the heads up earlier, but we just launched this last week a project that we've been working on for a year and a half. We finally launched the new USDB website, and it looks beautiful. It's great. We got a screaming deal on it through purchasing and all of that, and it was overdue. It's more accessible, which of course is very critical, and it just looks beautiful. So it was time for a refresh, and I just wanted to show you all. It's fun to click around. You can find things very easily. Still has the same amount of information on it, which is significant. And at the bottom, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this first page, one of my favorite features is we've got these little videos of our teachers and others, and they have Bethany, who is interpreting today for us also, signing in the corner of each of those videos, and you can see that. Anyway, it's just visually beautiful, and also accessible for those who don't have high levels of vision, and accessible for the deaf, and it's just awesome. So that's something we've been working on for some time, and I wanted to share that with you. The second item I have, the only other item today for the superintendent report, I'm actually going to ask Superintendent Patton to review. We just recently did a deep dive with our UPIPS. UPIPS is the accountability system for special ed, basically, for Utah here. And they annually, we have interaction and we have UPIPS, but every 5 years, it's a deep dive, kind of like another audit. which we, as you heard earlier, we love audits. So it was a great, fun experience. I went to a periodontist yesterday, and that was really fun too for me. So it's the kind of people we are. Anyway, Superintendent Patton, would you, I was going to try to do this, but I realized, no. She knows the big words a lot better than I do. And so she will also be representing the data from the deaf school because, unfortunately, our other superintendent is out of the country and can't join us today. So go ahead, Susan, if you don't mind.
So the UPIPS, I went a long time without knowing what it actually stood for, so I just want to tell you what it stands for. It's the Utah Program Improvement Planning Systems Manual. And so we are not manual, there's lots of things with UPIPS, but I wanted you to know that because for so long I'm like, well, so we've got the UPIPS report back, and we forget that people don't really know what that acronym means. So the overall, I want to go over a couple of overall findings or things that the UPIPS team said to us that we were really happy about. Overall, we felt really good about the UPIPS review. They review file compliance, so they sit down with our administration as far as a principal, and they go through our files in depth, and they're looking for anything procedural. They're looking for whether goals are tying to our present levels, whether the services are tying to the goals, all of the fun compliance issues. And so we did well.
Can I just interrupt 1 second and say, who was this doing this?
It's the
Member
USB.
Lear?
It's
Oh,
USB,
within
yes.
the
Yes,
Use
so
the
they have
microphone.
staff. So there was, I think, 17 of them that came, but there's a whole team that they send different ones out. So, and so the districts statewide, every 5 years, have a UPIPS review. So we did a great job in linking our present levels, or what's called the PLAFUP. Our present levels, which is an assessment piece, we put all of our assessments into that PLAFUP to say this is where the students are currently functioning, and that's where the goals come from. So if we have a deficit in this area from the assessments, then we write goals, right, for those. And so they found that we really were tying the goals well to the present levels, which was a good thing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about just some guidance. There was some guidance on how to make sure the goals were measurable. So in the IEP, there's goals and then there's objectives underneath. So the annual goal and then the objectives. All of our objectives are extremely measurable, but we had some, not all, but some of our files did not have the measurement in the goal. So it might be, let me give you a very, very, very vague goal. Johnny will walk 10 feet, right? But in the objective, we've got to say Johnny will stand for so many minutes per day to get to that point. So we need to work on our annual goals being measurable. They would also like us to incorporate more data from the MAPS testing for the deaf school to measure academic progress. And then the reviewers would like to have fewer teams marking extended school year, or ESY, as determined later. So when an IEP is meeting, they can so if they're meeting in the fall, they can say, we don't have enough data. We're going to reassess this, and the students will determine whether that ESY is needed in the spring or sometime else during the year. We're going to take data over fall break or Christmas break or spring break. We're going to see if there's a regression, and then they have to reconvene. Michelle and I have been very big came out of this was that our paraeducators are saying they want more training, which I think that's statewide, right? That's not just within USDB. They noted that there was turnover in directors at our Springville location, but that the new director was very engaged and learning. We had specific feedback about post-secondary transition goals, and that was that the goals should be what the school will do instead of what the student will do. And I think this is only coming from Susan. We are very focused on what the student is going to accomplish, and that the student is driving as many things as can possibly happen, right? That they're telling us what they want to do, how they think they're going to get there, and then we want to do how they think they're going to get there, and then we want them to know they're driving this. We want them to be advocating for themselves, and to be really have independence reflected in all of their lives. But we got the feedback that maybe you need to take a little bit more control of that situation. So all of these corrections have to be done by October 25th. So we will be in the process. We have deadlines that we have to meet with Dana Archuleta, who's been fantastic, and we will have those. We'll have those done. One of the other things that I was just sharing with Joe that he said, I think you should share that. So I went through all of it. This is my summary. Not very professional, so I won't be sharing that with you. But from the UPIPS report, I went through every goal that we had, and then the ones that we didn't get 100% on, and why, and how many files they reviewed and how many files were non-compliant. This is an example of, so under the eligibility and evaluation criteria, that question was, does the file contain an evaluation of academic achievement? So we got a 67% on that, which that's not good. When I first saw that, I'm like, yeah, not good, okay. But we had 2 files that were reviewed and 1 was non-compliant. So because of our low numbers, they're not, this is not a review of every single student. They do only a certain amount of files. Another example is one of the ones was 67%. 4 files were reviewed and 2 were non-compliant. So and then one of them we got a 0. We got a 0, but only 1 file USDB wide was reviewed. And they were very, very great about this. UPIPS team was wonderful in saying, we understand USDB is always an outlier, always an outlier. How can we best meet the needs for you guys to get the information that you need? Because this is a process that Michelle and I feel like is very worthwhile for us as superintendents, but also for our administrators and the teachers. And our teachers were very much engaged. They did interviews with teachers, with students, and with paraeducators. And we just were very proud of who we are and what's happening. And also that our folks were very honest. I loved that the paraeducators said, you know, we could use some more training. And that's where the deficit is. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that. You have access to the report that came, that was in the, no, it wasn't. We didn't send that. We did not send that. But we can send that to you. Oh, perfect. Okay. So great.
I don't see any lights yet. We'll head back over to Superintendent Coleman.
Thank you. I didn't anticipate Dr. Tanner being online, but normally I allow each of the superintendents to share something in the superintendent report if they have them. So Michelle, do you have anything you'd like to share for the superintendent report before we move to the next item?
Sure. I would love to. Thank you for the opportunity. Yep, I just wanted to give you a heads up of how things have been going here at USD. So we have completed our academic bowl preparation. So academic bowl is a competition similar in not exactly we answer the question with a question, but it's that kind of academic endeavor. What they do is we have teams of schools that compete, and they compete as an individual and a group for their ability to answer academic questions. Historically, acronyms, I mean, these are extremely difficult types of questions. And our students performed very well. And because of that, the Gallaudet University is paying for us to all those who are competing at the national level. And so we have students that will soon be going to the national level to compete in the academic bowl. And quite frankly, I think they're going to perform very well. I wouldn't be surprised if they came in first place. So I've got some of those students here with me in Japan. One of the things that helps them in understanding and asking those or answering those questions is that they've had these different experiences about different world endeavors, cultural things that of those nature that really do enrich their lives and improve upon who they are. So those things, we've also have some students that are going out to Boston next week, to study the history of our country in Boston. And we recently competed in robotics competitions, in which, again, we came off one of the top in those endeavors. So that's coding, that's drones. It's also ROV, which is when they go under the water and do some things. And we compete with other schools for the deaf. And quite frankly, there's some that we're even competing with some hearing schools, because we're doing a great job. So those are the things we're working on. We're getting ready. It's spring break for our Sully campus next week. This week is for our Springville and Ogden campuses. And so they're out. And we'll be back soon, and we can give you a report as you would like on any of those endeavors. And today, our students here in Japan are going to be riding the bullet train to go see Hiroshima. And so we're learning a great deal about that and how the Japanese perceived the bombing of Hiroshima, which is, as you may guess, slightly different than what we perceived it here. So we're looking forward to that, and it's going to be a very productive and long day.
Thank you. So just to wrap it up, thank you, by the way, Michelle. That was perfect. As you saw earlier in the financial report, the enrichment funds are what allow us to do these things and for our kids to see the world in ways that a lot of them don't get to experience normally with those who can communicate with them. And so you notice that a lot of our enrichment funds, it's like we're not on a level trajectory to spend those down, what you approved, because now's the time in the spring that we do these types of activities with them. And by the end of the year, we'll come in to that budget more. We're not going to have, giant surpluses in there or anything, but that was a great example of what you see on the financial side too. This is where it actually affects the students themselves. So that's our report today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, let's move on to agenda item 5.3. This is information item, and we'll hear from Vice Chair Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I did want to point out, because I think sometimes there may be a confusion between the enrichment funds when we talk about trust lands versus the trust lands that are used in our schools, because here we have, they're going on trips to learn, and the additional curriculum that they have to use. I just wanted to refer to code. It's 53E-8-407. It's called Educational Enrichment Program for Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Blind, and Visually Impaired Students. There is established the Educational Enrichment Program. The purpose of this program is to provide opportunities that will, in a family-friendly environment, enhance the educational services required for deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, or deaf-blind students. So I just wanted to call our attention to that very specific difference that these enrichment funds are used for versus our traditional trust lands, which we do get, but in a minimal amount because our WPU, those are vested through WPU, which is a small amount of on-campus students. So just but I do want to, I'm excited. We met, the USDB committee met for our second time on February 11th. We met in two different sessions. One was a closed meeting where we did a deep dive into the essential employees and the related budget implications. We were pleased to have Representative Perici join us for that meeting and hope to have her continued presence and input. It was a valuable discussion as there were clearly some areas where the legislature's understanding of the use of budget for employees and services was not clearly understood. Our second hour was an open meeting, and you can go and watch that online, where we began a discussion that will continue this coming Tuesday on what are the special education services that USDB provides and what are the laws governing those services. I'm excited to report that after 3 months, we're ready to move from the planning and administration phase to implementation. Our meeting this Tuesday will be our first dive into the questions that Public Ed Appropriations has asked us to review. We'll be considering a bylaw change that would allow the USDB committee to go into a closed session when specifically talking about certain sensitive topics and putting together a proposal for the makeup of the work group. Also a recommendation by PEA that will work together for the next 3 to 4 months to discuss governance, oversight, and ultimately provide a recommendation on a sustainable funding mechanism and future facility needs. And those items will come to the full board in May. So that is my report.
We have a question. I wonder if we should wait a couple minutes to let the translator catch up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're quick. Yeah, you were just going.
That's efficiency.
Yeah. Member Bogus.
Yeah, I'm just curious what would constitute a sensitive topic, because that's not a word typically used to go into executive session over. So what would that be, sensitive topic, and how would that fit within the OPMA code?
Well, and this will be part of the bylaw that we bring to you. So you can help define that if you see it. At this point, we were dealing with very specific employment issues. So we were talking about certain people, personnel, and personnel is a sensitive issue. So you'll be able to define that. But this was because of the non-funding, there was some concern and how we were moving forward. And so we were talking about this position, which holds this person, and we did not feel that was appropriate in a public meeting. So, thank you. Superintendent?
Oh, I was just gonna, you answered it, actually. I don't need to.
Okay, any additional questions? Let's move on to 5.4. Back to you. Is that not you, Vice Chair Wood? Is that?
Do you want to talk about
I'm gonna let you
the
guys fight over that.
proposed, the information on enrichment that we'll be dealing with? We decided not to make it an action item because it's more appropriate for
That's
the
right.
advisory council.
That's right.
to
My
bring
screen
to us.
turned off. I'm like, which one is that again? So,
Sorry.
yes, this is more of a heads up. It's an informational item about what we're going to bring to you for approval. As you know, we normally come to you in your May meeting to approve our annual budget. This year, because of the financial changes that have been made with your rules and with legislation, and because of we're still really working our tails off to problem solve the tight budget for next year, it may very well be your June meeting. But as part of that process, as it rolls out, one of the items I wanted to draw your attention to was with the enrichment funds. We budget each year to spend basically the money that comes in from that. We have about a 1-year surplus that we don't really dig into. And part of our proposal for stretching the budget this next year is to fund certain positions that oversee those administrative, those enrichment programs. They're normally covered in our normal personal array, but we're looking at drawing down some of that. It's a legitimate use because they are working for those programs. It won't be able to be sustainable long-term, but we're looking at probably moving about $862,000 one time, and using that to fund some of those positions, and that'll help us save that much of our shortfall next year. Mr. Empey, do you have more comments?
When we prepared that list, we didn't have from the legislature what the 2.5% salary increase was going to be for next year. So when we have that document for you to review and approve next month, it'll be roughly around $930,000. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
A heads up, we thought you might want to be aware of, and it can be part of that budget discussion at that time.
And this is back on the last agenda item, another thing that I thought of for Member Bogus. The other topic, sometimes we go into student data, like their transportation, where they're at, contracts that we're working with, and it's very specific to student PII. So that was another one. So.
Well, thank you. USDB staff, we appreciate your work and for the information that you've shared with us today. With that, we will adjourn the USDB meeting and move into our next agenda item, which is our study session. So, board members, let's take 5 minutes while we find the appropriate staff, and then we'll meet back here in 5 minutes. Thank you. Board members, let's start gathering here. You'll see that Deputy Superintendent Newey is passing out some information that we will use during this study session. And then I'll invite, so Elise, whenever you are ready, you have the floor, okay?
Alright. I will actually start with some slides, so. Are new to the process, and so I wanted to share what that looks like on our end, and be transparent about that, and then share some of more of the nitty-gritty details, and that's when these documents will come in handy, so no need yet. And if you have a question, please feel free to ask it as we go through. No need to wait till the end. Just generally speaking, this year there was 238 bills that were introduced that had to do with education, and this we apply having to do with education fairly broadly, so anything that has to do with how we get our finances, to building codes, anything that could touch on public education, we track and follow throughout the session. Of those, 136 passed, which is a total of 57% bill passage rate, and 80 bills will be in our bill book. Typically, I know last year we had the bill book out by this board meeting. We should have it by Tuesday of next week is the goal. And so then we will send that PDF to each of you. And so you'll have that bill book probably within a week or two. So I'm excited for that as well. But apologies that it's not here for today. Just for a point of comparison, last year there was 273 bills introduced, and of those 166 passed. So there was a higher number of bills that were introduced and a higher passage rate. We had a total of 113 bills in the bill book. So just as a comparison.
Can you just answer a quick question?
Sure.
Maybe I should know this. You have 136 passed, 80 in the bill book. What does it take to get into the book?
We just have to like it.
Yeah.
No, it's anything that if there is a direct impact on LEAs or USB. So there's always some bills that we just say you should be aware of, or just kind of general, but if they don't have a direct impact on a school or us.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
What education bill wouldn't have an impact on a school or us?
There was a couple financial related ones that just generally impacted finance. Jen's going to help me present today, and I'm so glad. I'll take a friend any day. So then this is our overview of the funding. We had an overall increase of the WPU by 4%, so that just covered the inflation, an increase in the minimum school program of 6%, which came out to $7.4 billion, and then $8.65 billion in funding. So that's $648 million of new money, $417 one-time funds, and then broken down further, $231 of ongoing funds. Just as a point of comparison, this is last year, just for your reference. So last year, the WPU was raised not only for inflation, but also an additional 1.2%. So just as a comparison. So then what does that look like for us as an agency and as a state? And so these are some of the different types of impacts that we measure. So obviously funding, the $648 million in new funding. We have 41 rules that we are either writing or amending, and we'll talk more about that later. There are 10 new programs, 15 reports. These aren't necessarily all brand new full reports. This could be new aspects of a report that already exists. Same for the LEA reports. There's 12 that are either impacted or new. and then 8 RFPs.
I have a question by Member Lear.
And you said to ask the questions as we go, but I don't want to, like Christina said, I don't want to derail what your planned presentation is. However, I think it would be interesting to know, with all the talk about the, now I forget the name of it, the reports and something task force, how, are there fewer reports this year than last year? Do you remember?
Give me just a second.
Or reports, yeah, reports. Both reports for USB and reports for LEA. Just curious to see if we made any progress. Oh, no, there are more. There are a third more. And down a little, no, and more for LEAs. Thank you very much for sharing that.
I will say that not all of those are brand new. So some of those are amendments to existing.
But that's the increased number and repeat performance. So clearly that's made a big impact, right? Thank you.
And we also, just as a way of information, if there's an application, we count that as a report just for our data purposes. And so applications are generally by choice, right, or to get additional funding. So it's not necessarily a required report that every LEA has to do, but it could be an
Like
application.
for a grant.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And they're reporting data. So that's kind of our big overview. I'm bringing back this slide from before the legislative session. We went through the legislative session and all of the required parts, and now we're in the implementation phase. So that really involves communication with LEAs. We're doing that on a regular basis. We're implementing programs. We're writing rules. You all worked on those this morning. And then we have interim committee reports that are coming up throughout the year. So we really chunk our implementation process into kind of 3 chunks. We have week 1 right out of the gate. What are all the things that we need to do right away? Things that we do in that first month. We're really heavy on getting that implementation process out, and then we keep implementing throughout the year. During the first week, we get together as an agency and we put together what we call our implementation tracker. And this is a massive tracker that includes everything that happens across the state in terms of each individual bill. So we track what staff member is over that, whether or not we are going to communicate with LEAs about that type of bill, what programs, what funding is impacted. All of these details are in a tracker. And if you'd like to see parts of that, I'm more than happy to share. This blue sheet that I gave you that I'll give you a PDF of as well. This is a condensed version of that tracker. So this is the parts we thought you would find most helpful and interesting. Otherwise, it would be even smaller than 6-point font. In the 1 month after the implementation or the session is over, there's really 2 big parts. So we put together a slideshow of all of the bills that were passed, and we go around presenting that. We call that our roadshow to the different interested stakeholders. So we meet with the IT directors of LEAs, with curriculum directors, with in-house counsel. Next week, we'll be meeting with superintendents and BAs to present all of those, and we have those discussions and not only present them with the information that we have, but get feedback and questions from them that help our implementation process. Related to that is the bill book. So each year, our agency puts out a book. You could see in backup last year's book for reference that includes, again, all of those bills that impact both our agency and schools throughout the state, and includes some of that information. It is not meant to be legal advice. It's not meant to be a checklist of all the things that LEAs or schools need to implement, but just guidance that they can then use. And there is contact information in that book for the direct staff member here at the agency that people can reach out to if they have additional questions. And then we have, yeah.
Yeah, Member Lear.
Will you do a few paper copies as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let us know if you'd like a paper copy and we can get those. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Friday. We generally have made, I think we've made a paper copy for the board, so we'll just make one for all of you. We usually get maybe 25 printed, but we've stopped sending the printed books to the legislature and giving them out to superintendents because it just saves trees, as well as people like them digitally so that they can pull things out of it and put it in a slideshow or something. And we do that through our contracted printer. So it usually takes, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, right, Elise? Remembering that? It's several weeks. So now that we've got it to that final point where, we hesitate to print because we always find an error. It doesn't matter how many sets of eyes we get on it, or there's some update or something that happens. So we do limit the printing. So if you come to us and say, hey, could I have 30 more copies, we will probably turn you to the digital copy. But we want to make sure that you have one. And it's handy. I love the printed copy just because I can flag it and keep it handy. But we'll definitely make sure that you get one. Just giving you that caveat that if you have constituents or others that ask for them, we will probably just refer you to the digital copy if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And so after we've kind of done that first push, we are almost to the end of that. Then we do more of the nitty gritty work. For my curiosity and for my purposes, I tried to break down each of the bill's impacts a little bit more on a granular level. So these are the USBE updated requirements. So we are either staffing or supporting 4 committees. We have 15 additional reports, as we talked about, additional training requirements, and those are trainings that we conduct. 2 studies. We're updating 1 set of standards, 34 amended rules, 7 brand new rules, and then 1 data sharing agreement. And those are some of the requirements that came out of legislation. From an LEA perspective, 19 policies will probably need to be updated. And again, that's going to be different for every LEA, but that is our best guess. Committees, reports, applications. So here I broke out the reports and the applications. Trainings that they'll need to do with their staff, curriculum updates that they'll need to do, as well as the data sharing from the LEA perspective. One of the printed sheets that I gave you is all of the rules that we are looking at drafting or amending this year. And we, at the very beginning of our process, so when we do that implementation tracker, we try to break it down by what month. So how urgent is this change? Understanding time constraints, right, for all of the committees, time constraints of staff, how long it's going to take to draft it, and then make our best guess at what month we should take this to a committee. So right now, this is what we are looking at. Most of these ones for April you saw this morning in one of your committees, and then this goes throughout the rest of the year. At the bottom, you'll see there is one for next January. We don't need to do anything with that until next spring, so there's that one. And then there's 4 that we're not entirely sure we actually need an update for, but we are continuing to look into that to make sure. So those are included there as well.
Member Reel?
This might be, thank you, Chair. This might be something actually that Scott, who's not here, but I'm wondering if we have any sort of tracker or data on bills that are passed without fiscal notes but require funding for implementation. You're nodding your head like, yeah, of course I've thought about that.
Label it
But
unfunded mandates.
yeah, well, I just like, because some of them might not require. Oh.
So I skipped this slide because I wasn't sure how useful it was, but since you asked, I went through and so this isn't exact science. This is if a bill came with a requirement that was on that list that I showed you, and it also came with funding, I considered it funding attached. If there was a requirement and no funding attached to the bill, then it's the purple, there is no funding. So this is kind of what we're looking at. And this is for LEA is on your left, and then you've got USBE requirements on the right.
Member Carey?
Deputy Superintendent, but so when it says there was a requirement, was the requirement associated with the spending of funds?
It's not that exact. It's just whether if the bill came with funding and had a requirement, I considered it funded.
Okay.
Just for the sake of this purpose.
Wow, thank you.
Member Reel?
It would be interesting, possibly, and maybe this is something our finance team could do, is that, I mean, and on the LEA level, it would be harder, but I think at least at the USBE level, if we could put a dollar amount into the what was we had to find funds for X amount of unfunded legislation, right? And I only say that because I feel like that could be useful for the next legislative session when we do ask for dollars on certain legislation. Because I think often we have a lot of bills that have no fiscal notes on them. And it's been incredibly frustrating to knowing the amount of time and resources a lot of these mandates take on the LEA level and on the state level, USBE level, but come with no dollars, right? And then later we're begging for FTEs or all the X, Y, and Z is coming up. But I don't know, just a thought for next session.
Thank you.
And to follow up with that, that's one of our team's efforts this year is to look at ways that we can do that. Several members of the board and several members of staff met with LFA after the session to say, how can we do a better job of really estimating and then measuring the financial impacts of some of this legislation. And so we've been brainstorming with them about what kind of systems we can have in place and what kinds of data would be most persuasive come next legislative session on these areas.
So what I'm seeing is May committee meetings are going to be a little bit heavier. That's what I'm looking at here. Okay.
Yep. And that really is all of the information that I have. I have summaries of all of the bills, but assume that you all kind of know a little bit. But if you have any questions or want to dig deeper on anything, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions from board members? I am grateful for this document. It's always nice to see, and I know that this has been going on for years, but nice to see how each bill impacts or could potentially impact a specific rule instead of kind of wondering each time. So grateful for that document and presentation.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Does this complete all of your presentation, Elise?
That was my presentation.
Okay.
We were very.
I'm not saying we want to just talk for another 45 minutes. I'm just making sure. Superintendent Dixon.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. Just a question for board members. I guess I'm asking a question that you may not know what you don't know at this point, but I'm wondering, is there something that didn't get highlighted that maybe we're not covering of this session that might be helpful to you? I know you already asked some good questions. Member Real made a suggestion, but are there other things that come to mind? We're definitely not offended if you say we'd like more of this or less of this. We're just trying to make sure that we keep you informed as you work with your constituents.
Thank you, Superintendent. Member Lear.
Sorry. You pushed the button. Bad timing. It seems like in past years, there has been a report on, I'm trying to remember if it's a chart or a report or numbers or, what did the board ask for and what did we get? And then what did we ask for and what did we not get or partially get or that's something like that.
Yeah. Yes, if I may, Chair Hymas. That comes from Deputy Jones in Finance does that. I know he already has that prepared and can send that out to you.
We'll see it eventually or soon, I imagine.
Oh, is Deborah online?
And I don't
Oh,
need it
Deputy
right.
Jacobson, do you want to give Member Lear an update to that? I just acted like I was Chair Hymas. I apologize. Not as efficient or amazing as Chair Hymas.
Sure. Sorry, I can send that to you, Member Lear.
And I don't know if I'm sorry. I don't know if I need it right this moment. I was just hoping maybe when we receive the bill book or I just it's always good to know how effective we were or not effective. And it seems like there was one other thing I thought we have talked about before, but let me think on that. Thank you, though. I'm glad you have it.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you. Member Earl.
Yeah, and if there's any of the laws that we go over that we're like thinking, why didn't it impact this rule, right? Or should this have been changed or altered? What's the best way of maybe bringing it, just go through leadership or bring it to the attention of staff? Go to Elise? Okay. Just say, hey, I thought maybe this would be impacted by that, or when I read this, it looked like maybe this should be in a rule, so that's just the best way to, okay, thanks.
Thank you. I've got Vice Chair Wood and then Member Kelly.
And I did want to give an update to the board. The policy team is going to be sending out a survey that leadership we discussed about what were the needs that you could have, how could the policy team have supported your work during the session better. So as you get that, please fill it out because they really want to know what reports did they need, how can we use the Thursday meetings better. So just be watching for that.
Thank you, Member Kelly.
Yeah, those pie charts that you were showing earlier, the funded versus unfunded, I'm curious, I almost think, and maybe you've kind of addressed this, but yeah, the no funding, are there a handful of those that don't need funding? I mean, and should there be a third category of, okay, these don't need funding and have no funding, and these need funding but have no funding? You know what I mean?
Yes, that's a great question. If I may, Chair, I apologize. And that's one of the conversations we're having with LFA, because I think that there are a lot of these things that already align with tasks that staff is already doing, for example, right? It just fits right into what we're doing or just adds one small additional element and doesn't necessarily need funding. And that's kind of one of our questions with LFA as well is, I don't want to overspeak, but I think as a staff and as an agency are really good at absorbing a lot of costs. And when we do our fiscal impact statements to the sponsors of bills, I think staff are always on the side of saying, we can absorb that, we can do that. But there is almost always a cost, right? And so how to differentiate between those absorbable costs, but also measuring the impact, as Board Member Reel was saying, of there may be lots of small costs that we can absorb, but over time that adds up, right? But I think you're right. I think there are a lot of these that are maybe don't need necessarily funding.
I'm noticing on here, Elise, Member Booth. Member Booth, give me one question real quick. I'm just noticing on here, we have, for example, HB2, the first one on this tiny print document, has 4 rules, and they don't all come to the same month, to the same committee. So I bring that up because I wrongfully thought that we just take care of a bill at a time, when in fact it looks like HB2 specifically is spread, and we're going to address it again in a different rule in September. So one bill covers multiple rules, and so that, anyway, just seeing that and kind of clarifying that helps me understand. Sometimes we look at a rule and we say, well, the bill wanted this, and I'm sure staff, in your mind, you're too polite, but you're probably thinking, yeah, we'll get there, just be patient. So I guess I'm just calling out to myself, like, Matt, be patient. So anyway, I appreciate what the documents are saying to me and helping me understand this process a little bit better. With that, Member Booth.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. As we come out of the session, I think one of our challenges as members of the State Board is to find ways to communicate with our constituents the lay of the land, what really happened, what is the real impact. There's plenty of theories going back and forth among constituents and among educators and among parents. They all see it from a different perspective. And sometimes we get from legislators or from the governor, just look at everything we've done for education. We have, we've hit some home runs, and we have hit some home runs. And yet there is the outcry that, we're underfunded and we're not getting what we need in the eyes of some teachers and parents. And so they hear Governor Cox say this percentage is up and we've increased the amount of money, and we went from being this underfunded to now look, we're 7th in the nation or whatever. I would love to be able to somewhere meet in the middle and just lay out the facts for us, and then so that we could communicate effectively and comfort those that stand in need of comfort, and rah, see, we're going to be fine, to those that are feeling discouraged and overwhelmed and underfunded and noticed or underrepresented. I don't know how we arrive at that, or how we can really understand what really happened, from a financial standpoint, from a rule standpoint, from a burden standpoint. But I would love to give it a good old college try to see if we can't find a way to communicate with our constituents and help them get the real goods on what has happened, so that we're not having to go back and put out fires about things that really are not true, but somebody's going to pick up on it just because they didn't get everything that they wanted. Any thoughts or any ideas of how we could get ourselves educated and up to speed enough with all the right facts, so that we could then find a way to communicate that with our constituents, so that they understand that we get it. We know that, yeah, the legislators are saying this and this and this, and that's great, and we do appreciate the support they've given us. But you're right, we do need more, and we are working on that with this initiative or with that initiative, so that it doesn't feel that they're not being heard and passed over. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Booth. Yeah, that is exactly my feelings as well. I think there are so many things to celebrate, and so many things that will be an exciting challenge to look at as an agency, and it is hard to communicate the nuance of that adequately. Our hope is that with the bill book and these slides, that as we're going around and presenting the same information to all the different stakeholders, that at least the facts are presented the same to everyone that we come in contact with, and we would like to make that kind of information available to all of you. That's why we give you a hard copy of the bill book, and we're happy to share any other resources that we have as staff with you as you're communicating with your constituents. We're happy to do that, or I'm happy to come and present to people if that's something that's appropriate. So that's my first thought. Do you have other thoughts, Superintendent? Yeah.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wood?
I have a question back to that funded, unfunded. How often did you see that our fiscal notes were not, we'll talk about the bill about our website, that we tried to put in an increased, saying it's going to take some time and effort and money, and we got a 0. How often did that happen? Did you see where we would put something in and the message didn't quite cross the barrier of to the legislature?
That is also a question that I'd had that I would love to dig into. Just in speaking with our finance team, their guess, and again, this is the finance team guess, was about 5% of the time that it wasn't, that what we presented was not adequately. So that's actually much less lower than I thought it would be. But I'd love to dig into that as well. And when I do, I would love to share that information with you.
Thank you. Member Lear.
In the spirit of discussion. So you can tell me if this is not a good idea, but Randy's comments were more probably sophisticated and restrained than I would be. But in terms of telling my constituents what happened, I'm thinking of a graphic maybe that has these bills that, and maybe it's a list of bills with the names or somebody more creative than I am, but these bills positively impacted the classroom. These bills will be difficult, will make more work for administrators. These bills require most effort, will require most of the effort by the USBE. These bills will require more monitoring. At the USBE level, these bills will require, and you've got sort of kind of that in policies and grants and that kind of stuff. Is that too non-objective to if this is our opportunity to discuss what would really help us show a picture of what the legislature did and on the ground, is that the kind of thing that would be helpful, or is that too non-objective and there'll be people taking offense? Never mind. The answer is clear. Never mind.
It is tricky to do. I will say that in a way, because even what is positive impact in the classroom can be different for different constituents, right, or different stakeholders. That there are things that even LEAs, go to the legislature and ask for that other LEAs say, we don't need that in our LEA, right? And so it's very hard, I think, to do that at a state level. But I have the same desire that you do and would love feedback if any of you have good ideas.
I just think for us who are pretty steeped in this information, I mean, we're not like these folks, but we are. We understand this graph, pie chart. But I think what our teachers would want to know, some of our families would want to know, what does this mean to me? And I wish we could do it in a graphic fashion that maybe you tiptoe gently around some of the issues, but you say, this will require extra training for teachers. That's a more objective metric. This will require administrators to do that training, or district level, charter director level people to do that training. I'm just thinking out loud. Anybody can give it some more thought, and I just think that would be more meaningful to our constituents, my constituents, than, even though this is very helpful. I'm not demeaning this at all. It's great. It just requires you to have a more in-depth understanding of the system than something else. And maybe something too simplistic would be too simplistic. So it's just a thought. I'd like to be able to communicate, what does this really mean for me to a typical family member, school teacher. So thanks for letting me at least kind of exercise that.
Thank you. Member Lear, Member
With an
Green.
O.
For that first legislative session for me, and when we got that book that summarized everything that had just happened, and I was just blown away by it, and I loved it. And I just wonder, maybe if it isn't something like that, maybe it's just a link that you can send out, and you can, for those that are truly, maybe, I was going to say geek, but that might be a good word, but people that are interested in this realm, then they could click on that and they could look through that, and maybe it's something as simple as that, because I know that, to think when that legislative session was over, it was kind of like, oh, that was crazy. And then you have to keep working through that and then bring us a document that says, here's what just happened in the last 6 weeks. Yeah, exactly that. I don't know. I guess if we did want to share something, and I don't know, maybe we do already, but I think that sharing that could be a really good first step if we wanted to get that out to the public.
Thank you, Member Green.
Oh, I was just going to say, we do put it on our website. And so we make that available to the public and happy to help you link that to whatever you want to distribute.
Board members, thank you for your questions, for your comments, for your time. I don't see any other lights. I would entertain a final motion of the day. Do we have a second? Motion to adjourn is in order. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Member Bogus in opposition. That motion carries. We are adjourned.